All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to my FiveM Zero to Hero development series. And I apologize, it's been a little bit longer between episodes than I had planned. Life kind of gets busy like that, but we are back at it, and today we are going to talk about some GUI elements. So displaying HUD type information to the user on screen. And we've got a bunch of different topics we're going to cover today. Hopefully some of these maybe you've never seen before or seen implemented well, like busy spinners or text input. So we're going to run through all of these and hopefully give you a really good foundation for managing HUDs and displaying information to the user. And in the next episode, what we're going to cover we're going to cover GUI, or displaying web pages on top of the game, which can really unlock a lot more potential for what you're displaying to the user. But for today, we're going to be talking about 7 different things. We're going to be talking about notifications, advanced notifications, alerts, markers, subtitles, busy spinners, and text input. So starting off strong with notifications. So I'm going to break this out into 2 separate things. I'm going to have a show notification function, and then we're also going to have a test notification command, which we will use to actually trigger this function. So this is something that we could reuse. Obviously we want to show multiple types of notifications. So let's talk about the natives that we need to show a notification. So we've got 4 natives that we need to call to show a notification, or 3. We can exclude background color, but we're going to include it just for demonstration purposes. So the first native that we need to call, and these do need to be called in a specific order, is, and one thing you're going to find with anything GUI related is the natives make absolutely no sense. So while I've talked in the past about how natives are really obvious, when it comes to UI stuff, they're totally not. So remember the natives, but don't try to understand what they're naming, because you're just not going to be able to in a lot of cases. But the first native we call is begin text command the feed post. And the parameter that we pass in is going to be the text label. And in this case, we can just use all caps string. That's an easy one. You'll find me using it a lot. And then providing text content using substring player name. You can get fancy and use labels here, but for these purposes, we're not going to. We might do that in some later ones, but we're just going to use string here. And then the next native you call is add text component substring player name, which makes absolutely no sense. But this is essentially your message. So this is where you're going to put your message in, whatever you want to say to the user. And then optionally, we have the feed next post background color. And in here, you can set a color to show your notification with a specific color. And then finally, the native that actually displays it to the screen, end text command the feed post ticker. Once again, doesn't make a ton of sense. Now we've got 2 Boolean parameters here. The first one is important, which is actually going to control if the notification flashes on the user's screen or if it's just static. And the second one, B has tokens. Once again, not very useful, but effectively, if we set this to true, then the notification will stick around in the pause menu. You can go to info, brief, and notifications and see the notification even after it's passed, which can sometimes be useful. So jumping back into our code, I have all of this set up in a show notification function that's going to accept a message, color, and then those 2 booleans, and then execute that. So our test notification command, I'm just going to actually make that camel case for the sake of it. Let's get our parameters in here, and let's call show notification. I'm going to break this out into multiple lines just so it's a little bit easier to see what's going on. And we're actually going to want raw command. All right. So we'll just pass raw command straight through the notification. So whatever we call this command with will get passed through. And then color, let's give it a nice orangey red, which is going to be 130. And if you look at the natives for the feed next post background color, you can find a list of all of the colors that we can use here. And we'll say, yes, we want it to flash, and yes, we want it to save to brief. So this is about it for showing a notification. It's just these 4 natives. And like I said, probably best if you break this out into a function so it can be reused and you're not typing these 4 natives all over the place. So let's go ahead and check out and see how this works. So if we call test notification foo bar baz bat, there you can see we get the flash, we get the orange, we get foobar, bazbat. It's including test notification in there. I could probably clean that up a little bit. But there you are. There's your notification. Let's do it again. And as I mentioned, if we go to info and then notifications, you can see these notifications that we've received are logged in here so we can reference them later if we wanted to. And of course, if we didn't want to do that, we would just set the flash parameter to false. So that's notifications. Let's move on to advanced notifications. All right, for advanced notifications, it's almost identical to what we've done before. In fact, the first three parameters and the last parameter are all the same, but right before the last parameter, we add another call to end text command the feed post message text. Once again, these natives are not making a lot of sense, but let me explain effectively what an advanced notification is. So an advanced notification is going to show an image, like a title and a subtitle. They call it sender and subject. And then we can also display an icon as well. So if we look at the native for end text command, the feed post message text, we have a couple parameters here, texture dictionary and texture name. And then we have flash, which we knew from before. And it's kind of irrelevant in this case because it doesn't really work no matter what, at least according to the documentation. Icon type, which is an optional icon that we can show, like the RP icon or the dollar sign icon or a jumping arrow, a chat box, email icon. There's a couple different icons we can use there. Sender and then subject. So let's dive into the code and see how we're implementing this. So as mentioned, flash is irrelevant, so we've just hard coded that to false here. And then this is that extra native call that I was talking about, where we're gonna have texture dict. And with most of these textures for advanced notifications, at least the built-in textures, the dictionary and name are exactly the same, so we're just reusing that here. But if you wanted to be more precise, you could kind of extend this and do it a little bit differently. We've got our icon type, our sender, our subject, but everything else is the same. So we set the message exactly the same. We set the color the same, and we wrap things up with save to brief the same. So let's go ahead and implement this command here. And we're going to do this roughly the same as before. So our sender and our subject. We'll do this is sender and this is subject. And then for texture dictionary, I'm going to use char_ammunition. There are a bunch of these built in that you can also find referenced in the natives there. They've got a link to a bunch of different of these. And I'm sorry, this is going to be char ammunition. And then icon type, I'm going to set this to 8, which I happen to know is the RP icon. Of course, once again, referenced in the native, you can go find all these kind of references in the natives, or the native reference will have links to all of this information. And obviously the order is different here and here because we've got our method definition here. So we've got sender subject, texture dict, icon type, and then save to brief, we'll just say true. And let's try out our advanced notifications. So look at this. So we have sender, we have subject. Oh, and you know what? I might have forgotten color in here. Where did I definitely went wrong and I forgot color. I'm just going to tack it onto the end and we'll set it to 130. All right, let's try this again. And perfect. So we kind of got to wait for the debug log to disappear. And there we go. So we have our ammunition logo, sender, subject, and you see the RP icon in the corner. That's what we're talking about. And then our text down below like normal. So these are really great for things like text messages, or obviously you play GTA Online. You've seen these used before. My personal favorite has been using them for text messages and also phone notifications, like your Fleesa app or Moore's Mutual app, getting notifications that way. It makes it a little bit more engaging and immersive when you've got the app icon shown there. So that's it for advanced notifications. Next, let's move on to alerts. All right. So for alerts, we've only got 2-3 natives we need to use here. It's pretty simple. The first one is going to be begin text command display help. And we're going to pass in a text entry here. So I mentioned earlier that we probably wouldn't be using it. Turns out we are. I had kind of forgotten. So we're going to be passing in the name or the key of a text entry into this parameter or into this native. And then we have our in-text command display help native, which shape is going to be set to 0. And then we have loop, which I typically use as false. And then beep, which is going to create an audible ding when the alert first appears. And then duration is how long the alert should last. The way I typically handle it is I set duration to -1, and then I just run this in a loop until I don't want the alert to show anymore. We'll do things a little bit differently today for the sake of example, but definitely this is one that you kind of want to experiment with and figure out how you want it to work. So diving into the code, we're going to call add text to entry, and I'm going to use the key ch_alert. You can use whatever you want here, and then pass in our message. And then, as I mentioned, the begin text command display help native with ch_alert, and then end text command display help with 0, false, and then beep and duration. So let's go here and let's call show alert, and like before, we'll just pass raw command in as the message. And then sure, let's beep and show it for 30. And let's take a look at that. So we'll do test alert, hello there. And you see it disappeared nearly instantaneously. That's probably due to this duration. That might be in milliseconds. Perfect. So if we do -1, it shows up a little bit longer. And if our chat box would disappear for us, we have hello there up in the corner. All right, there we go. And there's foobar up in the corner. So that's it for alerts. Now, markers are simple because they're only one native, and kind of complex because there are a ton of parameters to this native. Fortunately, the documentation covers what they do pretty well, so let's run through them really quickly. Our first parameter is type, which is going to define the type of marker, and the FiveM documentation has a list of all the markers available to you. There's a whole bunch of them. There's everything from numbers to chevrons to circles to spheres to $signs, bicycle icons, car icons. And then our next three parameters are X, Y, and Z coordinates for the position of the marker. The next three are direction X, Y, and Z coordinates, which I typically don't use and I just set to 0. And then the three after that are rotation X, Y, and Z, if you want the marker to be rotated. And then the three after that are scale X, Y, and Z to set the size of the marker. And then the next four are going to be our red, green, and blue values, as well as an alpha value. Those are 0 to 255. And then we have a Boolean for bob up and down, which will cause it to kind of bounce, the marker to bounce up and down a little bit. We have a Boolean for face camera, which is going to make the marker always face the camera. Then we have a parameter that's kind of undocumented and irrelevant. Just set that to 2. And then we have a rotation value, and then a texture dict and texture name if we wanted to draw a specific texture as a marker. And then finally draw on ints to determine whether or not the marker draws on intersecting entities. Now, one thing that's of course important to note is that draw marker needs to be called every frame. So you'll need to run this one in a loop. So let's just grab this and drop it into our command here. We're not going to have a separate function for this since it kind of is its own function. Maybe if you had a pretty standardized set of markers you used, you could create reusable functions for that. So let's just go through here. Let me clean all of these up really quick. And for my marker, I'm going to use 6, which is a vertical circle. And then actually for my position, what I want to do is use player coordinates for it. So I'm going to just assign a variable here, player coordinates, that has the coordinates of our current player. And we're going to use that here. So player coordinates.x, y, and z. Once again, like I said, I don't really use the direction ones. So we're just going to set those to 0. And same with rotation. We're not going to worry about any special rotation here. So we'll just set that to 0 as well. For scale, let's just do 1 across the board to start with and see how that looks. And then I'm just going to make this a bright blue. So red 0, green 0, and blue, let's do 220, and alpha of 2, let's do 180. Sure, let's make it bob up and down, and let's make it face the camera. Like I mentioned, for this undocumented parameter, just set it to 2. And then rotate, texture dict, texture name, and draw on entities, we could probably just ignore. So with this absolutely giant native call here, which we can kind of clean things up like this. I mean, there's just no way to make this native call clean for sure. But so what we actually need to do is create a thread. So I'm just going to create a quick thread that runs this logic only for 10 seconds. Because like I mentioned, draw marker has to be ran every frame. So I'm just going to get a game timer and then say, while the game timer is less than our start time plus 10,000, we're going to run this thread. So let's see how this works out for us. And if we call test marker, oh no, I forgot to put a wait in and it's going to crash my game. All right, well, my game uncrashes. Quick wait 0 in our while loop here. All right, my game has uncrashed itself. And let's do test marker. And hey, we get our blue marker. It bounces up and down, and it's directly on our coordinates. So once again, there's lots of markers available to you. Be sure to play around with them, find some different interesting markers to use. And that's going to wrap it up for markers. All right, I know I'm moving quickly. We got a lot to cover today, so I hope you're sticking with me. Now we're moving on to subtitles. Subtitles are really simple. Those are going to be dead simple. We got 3 natives. You're already familiar with 2 of them. So our first 2 are going to be begin text command print. And then we're just going to give it string all caps as a string as its parameter. Add text component string, and this is going to be our message that we want to display. And then end text command print. And the first parameter is going to be the duration. And then the second parameter is going to be draw immediately. If we set this to true, it'll draw it right away. If we set it to false, it won't draw it until the previous subtitle has finished displaying. You might also be familiar with this. It's some people might refer to it as mission text, but it's essentially the text down at the bottom of your screen, usually persistent to tell you what to do as part of a mission. In our register command, we've created a quick function here with these 3 natives. Once again, just this absolutely dead simple. And then let's call that show subtitle with our raw command as the message. And then duration of 10. Hopefully that's seconds and not milliseconds. I looked at the docs, it's milliseconds. So we'll slap a couple more zeros on the end. And let's take a look at our subtitle. Beautiful. Now you can see... Oh, sure, there's a better one. Now you can see our subtitle down at the bottom. And the best thing is you can use color codes in here. You're probably familiar with it if you've done any missions. Obviously, if you play GTA, usually the objective is marked in yellow. So let's look at that really quick. Instead of using the raw command here, let's just say, go to the Fleesa and rob it, right? And now we'll get Fleesa in yellow. So if we try this again, go to the Fleesa and rob it. Perfect. Subtitles or mission text, whatever you call it, are perhaps one of my favorite things, believe it or not. I really love using them in my resources to provide that subtle and native to GTA guidance on what the player's objective is. All right, we're quickly moving on to busy spinners, which the natives are going to be kind of familiar to you already. The first native is going to be begin text command busy spinner on. And we're just going to give it a string called string in all caps, just like we've been doing with some previous ones for setting up text for some of these UI elements. The next parameter, or the next native, is going to be add text component substring player name. And this is where we're going to pass in the string that we want to display next to the busy spinner. And then finally, we have end text command busy spinner on. This is what turns the busy spinner on. It has 1 parameter, which is a spinner type. There's 5 types: left, left 2, left 3, save, and right. And I'm pretty sure save is on the right and it's just orange, whereas on the just right is just a white spinner. And then one other native you're going to want to know, because these spinners won't go off on their own, is busy spinner off, which turns the busy spinner off. So let's dive into the code. I have these 2 functions set up here: show busy spinner with a message and hide busy spinner. And I have my spinner type to 5, which is just a normal spinner. We're going to check out the saving spinner as well. So let's register a quick command to test our spinners. All right, what I'm going to do here is, if we don't pass in anything, then we're going to call hide busy spinner. And if we do provide words to show, then we're going to say we want the spinner on. So we're going to call show busy spinner and then just pass in our message, which is going to be raw command. Oh, and copy and paste got me here. That needs to be the message variable, not title. All right, let's take a look at our spinner. So if we call test spinner foobar, look at that. We have our loading spinner. It says test spinner foobar next to it, and we can turn it off like that. Let's take a quick look at some of these other spinners. Yep, that's what I thought. It's a orange icon. And just for good measure, let's run through all of them since this was pretty quick and simple. So 1, 2, and 3 all seem to maybe be the same thing, kind of useless. Yeah, all useless. So 4 and 5 are your useful ones here. And that's going to wrap it up for spinners. Text input. This is a little bit more complicated, but this is super, super cool and a great way to quickly retrieve some input, get the user to type something in. Examples that I've used it for in the past is requesting custom license plates. Easy way to type that in, setting time and fine if we're jailing someone. Lots of great uses for this. So we've got 3 natives here that we're going to use. The first one is display on-screen keyboard, which has a bunch of useless parameters. So let's run through them really quick. The first parameter, undocumented, we just set it to 1. The next parameter, window title, that is going to be a text entry key for what you want to show on the input. Parameter 2, Lord knows what it is, I leave it blank. Same with default text, concat 1, 2, and 3, I leave them all blank. And then finally, max input length is going to determine the maximum amount of characters that the user can input. Now, one other good thing to call out about max input length is if it's 63 or less, it's going to show a single line input, and if it's more, it's going to show a multi-line input. A couple other parameters we're going to need to know about is update on-screen keyboard. This one we call it, and it tells us the status of the on-screen keyboard. -1 if it's not active, 0 if the user is editing it, 1 if the user has finished editing, and 2 if the user has canceled editing. And then the last native we're going to be concerned with is get on-screen keyboard result, which is going to return null or the value that the user has entered. So let's take a look at the code that I've implemented for this. The first thing we do is add our text entry. Oh, I need a parameter there for title. CH input with our title. Once again, a text entry key is required here. So display on-screen keyboard. And like I mentioned, a lot of these are useless. The important one here is our label or text entry and then our input length. And then we're going to have to wait for the user to finish entering their text. So the way I implement this is while update on-screen keyboard is not 1 and not 2, then we wait. So if we remember our values for update on-screen keyboard, 1 is finished editing and 2 is canceled editing. So you could probably implement this if it's equal to 0, then wait. So we could probably simplify this down and just say if or while update on-screen keyboard is equal to 0, which is still editing, then wait. And then what we say is if, once they're done editing, we want to check the result one more time and say if they have not canceled editing, then get the result and return it. Otherwise, just return nil. So let's implement this in a command really quick. And the fun thing about this is we're going to get the value and show it in a notification using one of the earlier functions we wrote. So we're going to call get text input, and our title is going to be, oh, you know what? Let's make it dynamic. Let's pass in whatever the value of this command is. And then let's start out with an input length of 63. And then we want to show notification, result, color, we'll say 180, no flash and no save to brief. All right, let's try it out. So perfect. It might have been less than 63. I might have misquoted there. But here's our multi-line input. And if we go foobar baz bat hi. Hey, look at that. We got that back and shoveled it into a notification. And of course we can have our title up here. Oh, and there's our null notification. So let's try changing our input length down to like 30. Maybe it was 33, maybe 34, 32 in there. Perfect. So now we have our single line input. So once again, text inputs are one of those things that are really powerful that I really like and use a lot to kind of create a cohesive native feeling experience. And that is going to wrap it up for this episode. Thank you guys so much for hanging in with me. I hope you learned something here. Hope you learned about some new UI elements available to you that you didn't know about before. And you feel empowered to build some of this stuff yourself. So as I mentioned, the next episode that'll be coming out in the Zero to Hero series is going to cover NUI and how we do NUI things, which is really, really phenomenal and gives us way more flexibility in our display capabilities. And then we may follow this up, not immediately, but I do have some ideas for a Master Series episode that dives even further into scale forms and some other ways that we can display things on screen. But this is going to be it for now. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit like. Let me know down in the comments what you enjoyed or didn't enjoy. Those comments really help the channel grow, so they're greatly appreciated. And of course, hit subscribe and check that bell icon if you want to get more great content like this. Finally, be sure to check out the Master Series. I've mentioned that a couple times. It's a new series that I'm working on. Not many episodes yet, but more in the pipeline that do deep dives into some more advanced functionality in FiveM. And that's going to be it for me. I'm CharlesHacks, and thank you for joining.